He said I had no proof. He said it like the case was already over, like the truth was just a feeling I couldn't afford, and the law was a door I wasn't allowed to open. We were standing in the hallway outside Courtroom 6D, the air smelling like old coffee and printer toner, and my ex-husband's smile had that polished, effortless cruelty he saved for witnesses. He leaned closer, just enough for me to hear, and whispered, "You can tell your little stories all day, but you don't have proof, Maren. You don't have anything." Then he laughed, soft and satisfied, like he'd said something clever instead of something dangerous. I didn't answer, because I'd already learned the loudest person in the room is not the one with the power. The one with the paper is, and the funny part, the part he never understood, was that I stopped trying to prove anything to him months ago. I was waiting to prove it to the bank. It began on a Wednesday morning in early September, with my daughter's backpack half zipped on the kitchen table and my coffee turning cold beside the sink. The sun was bright on the linoleum, and for a second I let myself believe the worst was behind us. Our divorce had been finalized in July. The judge had stamped the decree and told us to move forward. My ex, Tyler Vance, walked out of court acting like he'd been wronged, but he didn't get the house, and he didn't get the alimony he'd demanded. And I thought, maybe he'd finally go chase someone else's life. I was rinsing mason jars for school snacks when my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I ignored those. Unknown numbers had become a new season in my life. Cash buyers, investors, foreclosure specialists, people who found your pain and tried to monetize it. But something in me, some instinct I couldn't name, made me answer anyway. "Ms. Vance?" a woman asked. I flinched at the name. I'd kept it after the marriage because my nursing license had it, my mortgage had it, my daughter's school records had it. It wasn't love. It was bureaucracy. "Yes," I said. "This is Dana Morrow with HarborPoint Bank, Fraud Prevention and Lien Services. I'm calling about your property at 2147 Westbridge Avenue. We received a payoff request and a document submission for a cash-out refinance. Did you authorize that?" The words hit like a door slamming. "No," I said, too quickly. There was a pause on the line. Not confusion, but confirmation. "I thought you might say that," Dana replied, careful. "I need you to stay calm, Ms. Vance. Someone submitted a limited power of attorney in your name, attempted to change your contact information, and requested disbursement to an account that is not listed in your profile. We froze the application. But there's something else. There is an active home equity line of credit secured by your property. It is delinquent." My throat went dry. "A HELOC," I whispered. "Yes," Dana said. "Opened 19 months ago. Current balance is $112,482. My knees went weak. I gripped the counter hard enough to hurt. "That's not possible," I said, but my voice sounded far away. "I didn't open any line of credit." "I understand," Dana said. "That's why we're treating it as potential identity theft and loan fraud. I need you to come into a branch today with identification. Bring any divorce documentation you have, especially anything related to title. And please, do not confront anyone you suspect. Let us handle the investigation." Do not confront. That was the legal and financial anchor, right there in my kitchen within 1 minute of that call. Not a rumor, not a threat, not Tyler's voice in my ear, but the bank's voice, measured and cold, telling me my home was carrying debt I never agreed to. I swallowed, looked up the stairs, and heard my daughter Lila singing in the bathroom while she brushed her teeth, careless and safe. That sound almost broke me. "Okay," I said into the phone. "I'll come." When I hung up, I stood in silence with my hands flat on the counter, breathing like a person who was trying not to let panic become a fire. Then I did the thing single mothers do every day without applause. I made breakfast anyway. Lila came into the kitchen with wet hair and sleepy eyes. "Mom, where's my gym shirt?" she asked. "In the dryer," I said, voice steady. She watched me for a second, too perceptive for 9. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I lied gently, because sometimes the only way to keep a child from feeling the earthquake is to stand still while the ground moves. I packed her lunch, walked her to the car, and dropped her at school with a smile that felt like it was stitched onto my face. Then I drove to HarborPoint Bank with both hands clamped on the steering wheel, every red light feeling like a test I could fail. Dana met me in the lobby. She was mid-30s, hair pinned back, eyes focused in the way people get when their job is to catch disasters before they explode. She didn't look at me like I was a bitter ex-wife. She looked at me like I was a client in danger. She led me into a small office and slid a folder across the desk. "This is what we received," she said. On top was the power of attorney. My name was spelled correctly this time, but the signature, it looked like mine if someone had watched me sign once and tried to copy it with their non-dominant hand. The notary stamp was smudged, and the commission number didn't match the state formatting. Dana pointed at it. "This notary number is invalid," she said. "It doesn't exist in the registry. That's one of the reasons we froze the application." She turned the page. HELOC statement. I stared at the balance again, feeling my body refuse to accept it. "How could this be opened?" I asked, voice thin. "Wouldn't I have had to sign?" Dana nodded. "Yes. Someone did sign. Someone provided identification. Someone completed closing documents. We have a closing file. We also have branch video." Branch video. That phrase felt like a lifeline. Dana continued. "We can't release everything without a formal request, but we can tell you our internal team believes the signer was not you. The ID presented had your name, but the photo does not appear to match you." My lungs pulled in air like I'd been underwater. "So it's fraud," I whispered. Dana didn't say the word immediately, like she was being cautious with something sharp. Then she nodded once. "Yes," she said. "It appears to be." My first impulse was to stand up, walk out, and drive straight to Tyler's apartment so I could slap the truth onto his smug face. But Dana's warning echoed again. "Do not confront." So I swallowed the rage and asked the question that mattered. "Where did the money go?" I said. Dana opened another page. "Disbursement was directed to a different institution," she said. "An account not listed on your profile." I leaned forward. "Do you know whose account?" Dana's eyes held mine. "We're investigating, but I can tell you, it appears to be linked to a business entity." I didn't need her to say Tyler's business name for my stomach to already know. Tyler had a consulting company on paper. It didn't consult anyone. It was mostly a bank account and an ego. He loved calling himself an entrepreneur. He loved telling people he was building generational wealth. He loved posting photos of luxury cars he didn't own next to captions about mindset. And he loved telling me I didn't understand money, while my paycheck paid the mortgage. He was charming in public and cruel in private. He could smile at a stranger like he was safe, and then turn to me in our kitchen and say, "You'd be nothing without me," as if my existence needed his approval. I married him when I was 28, fresh into my nursing career, tired of being the responsible one, seduced by the way he made irresponsibility look like confidence. We bought the house on Westbridge when Lila was 2. My credit got us approved. My steady income made the underwriter comfortable. Tyler contributed a small amount at closing, and then spent the next 7 years talking like the house was his trophy. When we fought, he'd throw the deed at me like a weapon. "My name's on it," he'd say. "You can't do anything without me." The last year of our marriage, he started talking about leverage the way normal people talk about weather. He wanted to refinance. He wanted a HELOC. He wanted capital. I said no because I could feel the risk in my bones. I wasn't against borrowing for real reasons. I was against giving Tyler a faucet he could turn on whenever his ego wanted a new toy. After I filed for divorce, he started threatening a forced sale. "You're not keeping it," he told me on the day he moved out, leaning against the doorway like he still owned it. "You'll be out within a year. I'll make sure of it." I believed he'd try. I didn't know he'd already started, because 19 months ago, I was still married. I was still tired. I was still trusting the wrong person with access to the file cabinet where we kept our IDs and tax forms and the safe code he'd insisted on setting up. A crime doesn't always look like a mask and a crowbar. Sometimes it looks like your husband knowing where you keep your passport. Dana asked me to write a statement confirming I did not authorize the HELOC and did not sign the power of attorney. I wrote it with shaking hands, then froze my credit while she watched step by step, because she'd seen too many people fall apart after the shock and forget the simple protective moves. Before I left, she said something that felt like a warning and a gift. "Ms. Vance," she said quietly, "people who commit this kind of fraud often rely on victims reacting emotionally. Please let the process speak. Let the process speak." I nodded, throat tight, and walked out of the bank with a folder in my hands that suddenly felt heavier than any suitcase. That afternoon, Tyler texted me, "You can't hide forever. You have no proof." The timing made my skin crawl. He didn't know the bank had called, but he could feel me pulling away from his control. He could feel me not responding, not panicking where he could see it. I stared at the message and did the hardest thing. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my attorney instead. Her name was Celeste Quinn, and she had the kind of calm that makes bullies nervous. She'd been a prosecutor before she went private. She didn't scare easily, and she didn't waste language. When I showed up at her office that evening and slid Dana's folder across her desk, Celeste read silently for a long time. Then she looked up and said, "This isn't just divorce warfare." "What is it?" I asked, even though I knew. Celeste's eyes narrowed. "It's loan fraud, identity theft. And if we can tie the funds to him, it's a criminal case." My pulse hammered. He'll deny it. Celeste didn't blink. He can deny gravity too. Doesn't change the fall. That night, after Lila fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a binder I hadn't touched since nursing school. I labeled it in thick black marker, Westbridge File. Inside, I started organizing everything: text messages, voicemails, letters, screenshots, call logs from unknown buyers, the fake default notice Tyler had once taped to my door like a curse. I printed it and kept it, because Celeste had said something that rewired me. Courts don't run on feelings, she told me. They run on patterns. So we built the pattern. Every 3 or 4 minutes of my life, Tyler found a new way to try to break me. A new number calling with a cash offer. A new email from an investor who heard you might be facing foreclosure. A new message from Tyler's mother saying I was ruining the family by not being reasonable. Then he brought it into Lila's world. One Friday, Lila came home from school quiet. Too quiet. She dropped her backpack and said, "Dad said you're trying to steal his money." My chest tightened. I kept my voice gentle. "Your dad is saying things because he's upset," I said. "But adults handle money through lawyers, not through kids." Lila's eyes were wet. "Are we going to lose the house?" I wanted to say, "Not if the bank and the court and the whole system do their job." Instead I said, "No, because a child doesn't need a legal lecture. A child needs a steady ground." That weekend, my credit monitoring pinged, new inquiry, then another. Tyler was applying for credit in my name, trying to open lines before the fraud flags caught up. I froze everything, reported it, documented it. Celeste filed an emergency motion in family court for protective orders, asking the judge to prohibit Tyler from contacting financial institutions or attempting to encumber the property. Tyler responded by filing his own motion to force a sale, claiming I was wasting marital assets and refusing to cooperate. He wanted the fight where he always wanted it, in public, messy, emotional. He wanted me on the stand crying while he looked calm, so I stayed calm, and I let the bank keep digging. In October, Dana called Celeste and me on speaker. "We have preliminary findings," Dana said. "The signer was male. The ID presented had Ms. Vance's name, but did not match her photo. The notary stamp is counterfeit. The disbursement account appears tied to Vance Meridian Solutions, LLC, Tyler's company." My hands went numb around my mug. Dana continued, "We're filing a suspicious activity report and cooperating with law enforcement. We can provide certified copies of documents and still frames from video pursuant to subpoena." Subpoena, certified copies, still frames. Tyler had said I had no proof. The bank had just handed me a language he couldn't laugh at. When Tyler's sale motion hearing arrived in early November, he walked into courtroom 6D with a brand new suit and a smug face, like he'd already written the ending. He brought a slick attorney named Russell Pierce, who talked like a man selling a product. Russell opened with a smile. "Your Honor, Ms. Vance is refusing to list jointly owned property. She's attempting to keep my client's rightful equity. We request an order, compelling sale and distribution." Tyler sat behind him, relaxed, arms crossed, like he was watching a show. Celeste stood. "Your Honor, before any discussion of sale, we need to address a fraudulent HELOC placed on the property without my client's authorization and the ongoing identity theft attempts originating from Mr. Vance's sphere." Russell's smile tightened. "These are allegations," he said smoothly. "There's no proof." Tyler leaned forward and laughed under his breath, then looked straight at me, eyes bright with mockery. He mouthed, "No proof." The judge, Honorable David Klein, a man with tired eyes and a reputation for impatience, leaned forward. "Counsel," he said to Celeste, "do you have documentation?" Celeste nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We have a sealed submission from HarborPoint Bank, including fraud unit reference numbers, preliminary determinations, and subpoena-ready exhibits." Judge Klein looked at the clerk. "Do we have a sealed file?" The clerk nodded and lifted a thick envelope. Tyler's smile froze. I watched him for the first time, not as my ex-husband, but as a man realizing the room was about to stop it being his stage. Judge Klein broke the seal and opened the file. Paper rustled. The judge read silently for a long time. Long enough that Tyler started shifting in his chair. Long enough that Russell stopped smiling. long enough that my heart hammered so loud I thought the entire courtroom could hear it. Then Judge Klein looked up. "Mr. Vance," he said, "are you affiliated with an entity called Vance Meridian Solutions, LLC?" Tyler stood, posture perfect. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Klein nodded once. HarborPoint Bank indicates a HELOC disbursement tied to the Westbridge property was directed to an account linked to that entity. Tyler's jaw tightened. Russell stood quickly. "Your Honor, we contest..." Judge Klein held up a hand. "Sit down." Russell sat. Judge Klein's gaze stayed on Tyler. The bank also indicates surveillance showing a mail signing under Ms. Vance's name with altered identification. It further indicates attempted contact info changes and online access resets from an IP address tied to your office service provider. The room went still. Tyler's face drained just slightly, like blood was choosing a different exit route. "That's not possible," Tyler said, voice tight. "She's making this up." Judge Klein didn't even look at me. He didn't need my emotion. He looked at the bank's letterhead. "Banks don't make things up in sealed submissions to court," the judge said. "They document, they report, and the allegations here are serious." He turned to Celeste. "Relief requested?" Celeste's voice didn't shake. "Denial of the motion to compel sale. Protective order restricting Mr. Vance from financial contact, attorney's fees, and referral to the county prosecutor for review of potential fraud." Referral. That word landed like a gavel inside my chest. Judge Klein nodded. "Motion to compel sale denied. Temporary protective order granted. Parties to communicate through counsel only. Attorney's fees reserved pending further evidence, and I will refer this matter for criminal review." Tyler's mouth opened. He tried to speak. Judge Klein's voice sharpened. "Mr. Vance, if you have nothing to hide, you will welcome the investigation." Tyler stood frozen, caught between rage and panic. Outside the courtroom afterward, Tyler leaned close, his voice low and venomous. "You think you did something," he hissed. "You still don't have proof. You have paperwork that can be faked." I looked at him and said nothing, because the truth was, he was right about one thing. Paper can be faked, and that's exactly what he'd been doing. Over the next 2 months, Tyler's behavior grew more desperate. He tried to contact me through Lila's tablet by sending messages in a game app. Celeste filed it. He tried to send settlement offers that were really threats. Sign this release, drop all claims, accept a small payout, or he'd ruin me. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, because I was letting the bank and the prosecutor build the kind of proof Tyler couldn't mock, the money trail. In December, an investigator named Paul Deegan from the county prosecutor's office called me for a victim statement. His voice was flat, procedural, but there was an edge to it that told me he'd seen this play before. "Ms. Vance," he said, "I need you to be precise. When did you first learn of the HELOC?" "September 6th, I said, "from the bank." "Did you authorize any HELOCs or power of attorney?" "No." "Did Mr. Vance have access to your identification documents during the marriage?" "Yes," I admitted, shame burning in my cheeks, even though I knew it wasn't mine to carry. Paul didn't judge. "Marital access is often how these cases happen," he said. "We'll obtain records." Within a week, HarborPoint Bank provided certified copies of the closing documents via subpoena. They provided a still frame from branch video. A man at the signing table with a baseball cap pulled low, but the jawline, the posture, the watch, it looked too familiar. It looked like Tyler. They also provided the disbursement record. The HELOC proceeds had been wired to a separate account at a different institution, then transferred in chunks to Tyler's business operating account, then used to pay a series of expenses that made my stomach turn. A boat rental membership, a luxury car down payment, payments to a consulting subcontractor that didn't exist. He didn't borrow against my home to pay bills. He borrowed against my home to buy a new life. Tyler was still telling people I had no proof, but now the proof was building without me saying a word. By mid-January, Tyler's attorney called Celeste asking for discussion. Not settlement. Discussion. That's the word men use when they feel the floor crack. Celeste listened, then muted the call and looked at me. "He knows," she whispered. "Knows what?" I asked, even though my body already understood. Celeste unmuted and said, "Send any offer in writing." When the call ended, she leaned forward. "The bank has identified the recipient account. The prosecutor has requested additional warrants. Tyler's trying to get ahead of it." The big twist, the one that flips everything, came in early February, right around the point where Tyler thought he could still control the narrative. It wasn't a dramatic arrest on my porch. It was a letter. A thick envelope from HarborPoint's legal department arrived with my name printed cleanly. Inside was a formal fraud determination, victim of identity theft, unauthorized HELOC, counterfeit notarization, altered identification, and bank action to release liability as to me while pursuing recovery from the responsible parties. Responsible parties, plural, and attached, was a copy of the internal investigative summary that had one sentence underlined. Online banking credential reset attempts originated from the IP address registered to Vance Meridian Solutions, Suite 410. His office, his network, his arrogance. He didn't even use a burner hotspot. He used his own office internet like he believed rules were for other people. That was the moment the story stopped being my word against his. That was the moment the bank spoke in a language the court could not ignore. Tyler found out within days. He called me from a blocked number at 1:57 a.m. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway. "Maren," he said, voice tight, "you need to stop. You're making this bigger than it is. We can handle it privately. You hear me? Privately. Privately." He wanted it private because private is where he could twist, threaten, guilt, and control. Public is where paper wins. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Celeste. No response. In late February, the prosecutor's office executed search warrants. I found out because Paul called and said, "We retrieved devices and financial records. You may be contacted further, but I want you to know this is progressing." Progressing. My knees went weak with relief and fear, both at once, because justice feels like safety and danger when you've lived with someone who punishes you for resisting. Tyler responded exactly like a man who knows the walls are closing. He tried to set me up. He sent Lila home from his supervised visitation with a note in her backpack. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. Let's talk." It wasn't signed. It was bait. Celeste filed it as a violation attempt and tightened the visitation restrictions. Then Tyler tried a different route. He filed a civil suit against me, claiming defamation and interference with business relations, arguing my false reports harmed him. Celeste laughed when she saw it. "He's trying to scare you into silence," she said. "But the bank reports aren't yours. They're theirs." And that's when Tyler's favorite line came back. He said I had no proof. He repeated it to his mother. He repeated it to mutual friends. He repeated it on a voicemail to my sister, thinking she'd pass the message. Tell her she has no proof, he said. Tell her she'll look stupid. I didn't correct him, because I wasn't trying to win the argument. I was trying to win the record. In March, we were back in family court for an updated hearing on property issues and visitation conditions. Tyler walked in looking different, still trying to project confidence, but the edges were frayed. His attorney, Russell, looked pale. Tyler leaned close to Russell and whispered something, then looked at me and smirked like he still believed he could intimidate me with a face. When Judge Klein took the bench, Celeste stood first. Your Honor, she said, we have updated documentation from HarborPoint Bank confirming fraud determination and pending criminal investigation. We also have evidence of ongoing harassment and attempted contact in violation of the court's protective order. Russell stood quickly. Your Honor, this is still unproven. My client denies wrongdoing. There is no proof linking him. Celeste held up a thick binder. My Westbridge file, now heavier, tabbed, organized, clean. Proof is not a vibe, Celeste said calmly. It's documentation, and we have it. Tyler chuckled, loud enough for the first row. That's cute, he said. A binder. Judge Klein's eyes narrowed. Mr. Vance, he said, sit down and stop performing. Tyler froze, then sat, jaw clenched. Celeste submitted the bank's fraud determination letter, the IP evidence, the disbursement trail, and the prosecutor's case number. Judge Klein read, then looked at Tyler like he was seeing him for the first time without charm. This court is extending protective orders, he said. Supervised visitation remains, no direct contact, and any motions to compel sale are stayed pending the criminal matter and lien resolution. Stayed. Another door closed on Tyler's leverage. Outside the courtroom, Tyler hissed, You're ruining my life. I looked at him, voice quiet. You did that, I said. He laughed bitterly. Prove it. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. The proof was walking toward him already, in the form of a prosecutor who doesn't care about his smile. By April, Tyler was indicted. Paul called and said, charges have been filed. Identity theft, forgery, attempted mortgage fraud, filing false instruments. My throat tightened. Are you sure? Paul's voice was flat. We're sure. The arraignment was on a rainy Tuesday morning. I didn't have to attend, but I went anyway because I wanted to see my reality reflected in a room where Tyler couldn't rewrite it. Tyler stood at the defense table in a suit that looked like armor, but his eyes were restless. He kept glancing around like he was searching for a loophole in the walls. The prosecutor read the charges, then summarized the facts in a voice that didn't care about feelings. The defendant used counterfeit identification and falsified notarized documents to obtain a home equity line of credit secured by the victim's residence. Proceeds were disbursed to accounts linked to the defendant's business entity and used for personal expenditures. Linked, used, secured. Those words were the bank speaking through the law. Tyler's face tightened, but he tried to look bored. The judge set conditions: no contact with me or my daughter outside supervised channels, surrender, passport, restricted financial activity, report to pretrial. Restricted financial activity. The one thing Tyler loved, money, now fenced. He walked out of the courtroom and tried to look like he didn't care, but his mother's face was tight with fear, and Russell looked like he wanted to disappear. That was around the 85% mark of the story. The power reversal beginning to show itself, not in my voice, but in his posture. He wasn't mocking now. He was bracing. The final reversal came in a way that still makes my chest ache when I remember it. In May, HarborPoint completed the lien release, as to me for the fraudulent HELOC. They recorded the release and sent me certified confirmation. I held the letter in my hands, read the words released and void as to borrower, until my eyes blurred. And then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried like someone who had been holding her breath for a year, because the fear wasn't just about Tyler. It was about the roof over my child. And now the roof was safe again. When Tyler's criminal case moved toward resolution, he tried to bargain. He offered a plea deal through his attorney that included restitution and probation, but also a request that I sign a civil release agreeing not to sue. Celeste showed me the offer and said, "He wants you to trade silence for convenience." I stared at the paper and thought about the night Tyler taped a fake default notice to my door and smiled at the camera. I thought about Lila asking me if we'd lose the house. I thought about Tyler whispering, "You have no proof," like it was a spell. And I said, no. Not because I needed revenge, because I needed a line my daughter could grow up behind. Tyler accepted a plea in late summer: probation, restitution, community service, and a felony record. He didn't go to prison, but he lost the illusion of being untouchable. He lost the ability to walk into a bank and talk his way into someone else's money. He lost his business license. He lost clients who didn't want their names near fraud. And then the sheriff came, not for me, for him. Tyler still had boxes in my garage, tools, paperwork, a filing cabinet he'd left as an excuse to stop by. Celeste petitioned for a sheriff-supervised retrieval, with a strict no trespass order attached. The court granted it. On a Saturday morning in early October, a sheriff's SUV rolled onto Westbridge Avenue and parked at my curb. My heart jumped anyway, because trauma doesn't check case numbers. Lila stood behind me at the window, fingers curled into my shirt. "Is that for us?" she whispered. I shook my head, voice soft. "No, it's for the rules." The deputy knocked, professional. "Ms. Vance?" "Yes. Mr. Vance has 15 minutes, he said. "Garage area only. No contact. If he violates, he's removed." I nodded. Then Tyler's car pulled up. He got out slower than I expected. No smug walk, no mockery, just a man in jeans and a jacket, like he was trying to hide inside his own skin. The deputy repeated the rules. Tyler nodded without looking at me. He carried boxes to his trunk quickly, like he wanted the moment over before it carved itself into him. Lila whispered, "Is Dad mad?" I swallowed. "Dad is dealing with consequences," I said quietly. Tyler heard that. His head snapped up. For a second, his eyes met mine, and I saw it. Not love, not remorse, just disbelief, like he still couldn't accept that paper had beaten his voice. He set one box down, breathing hard, and muttered, "You really did all this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step forward. I didn't give him the fight he always wanted. I just said, "I didn't do it. I documented it." His jaw clenched. "You think you had proof?" I let the silence hang for one long beat. Then I said the line that ended the story. "I didn't need proof," I said softly. "You left it everywhere." Tyler stared at me, lips parting like he wanted to argue. But the deputy was there. The order was there. The bank letters were already filed, and his own plea record was already stamped. The deputy checked his watch. Time. Tyler shoved the last box into his trunk and slammed it. He looked at Lila, and his voice softened just enough to confuse a child. "Hey, kiddo," he said. Lila hesitated, then lifted her hand in a small wave. "Bye, Dad," Tyler swallowed, then got into his car. Before he drove away, he rolled down the window and called out, bitter, like a habit. You still had no proof. I didn't move. I didn't shout. I didn't chase. I just answered the truth that had finally settled into my bones. The bank disagreed, I said. Tyler's face tightened. Then he drove away. The sheriff's SUV followed a minute later. And when the street went quiet, the quiet felt different. Not tense, not waiting, just peaceful. That night, after Lila fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my Westbridge binder open in front of me. Tabs, dates, letters, certified copies, a lien release, a court order, a record that didn't care about Tyler's opinions. I thought about how many times he'd told me I had no proof, and I realized he had been right about something deeper than he intended. I didn't have proof at first. All I had was a gut feeling and a bank's phone call. Proof isn't something you're handed in the moment you're harmed. Proof is something you build quietly, patiently, while the other person performs. Proof is every screenshot you don't delete, every voicemail you save even when it makes your stomach turn, every letter you file even when you want to burn it all down. Proof is letting institutions speak because they don't get tired, and they don't get bullied, and they don't fall for charm. Tyler said I had no proof, until the bank produced video, until the IP logs pointed to his office, until the money trail showed his business account, until the judge opened the file, until the lien was released, until the prosecutor filed charges, until the sheriff supervised his last excuse out of my garage. He said I had no proof. And the truth is, I didn't need to prove anything to him. I only needed to protect my child. And sometimes, protecting your child looks like silence, not the silence of surrender, the silence of a woman letting the record grow loud enough that when the right people finally speak, the person who mocked you has nothing left but an empty laugh. Because in the end, the proof wasn't my anger. It wasn't my tears. It wasn't even my voice. It was his choices, recorded, stamped, and read out loud by people he couldn't interrupt.